Aloha, I'm Malia Zimmerman, and this is News Behind the News. All across the country, we're hearing now of human trafficking victims being helped by the FBI and other organizations. But what happens after they're rescued? We have an organization here today called Courage Worldwide, and they're establishing themselves in Hawaii, and they're looking to help children who have been trafficking victims. And I want to welcome them to the show because this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. How can we help these children that need our help in Hawaii? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Malia.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Jessica, let's start with you.
Okay. I'm Jessica Munoz. I'm the director for the Courage House Hawaii project. And we've been talking about trying to start this home for the past couple of years. I started as working in the healthcare industry, wanting to make everyone in healthcare aware that this was a problem. Little did I know that children were being trafficked right here in our islands. And sadly, as we look at what we can do for them, there's no home. There's just nothing for them once they're taken off the streets. So I've been involved with an organization called Courage Worldwide, which is working to establish homes around the world specific for children who've been victims of sex trafficking. There's a home open in Northern California and then one in Tanzania, Africa. And so we're looking to be the third home to open here in Hawaii. So we're making plans to get this home open.
Great, okay. And Tammy, tell us about yourself.
I'm Tammy and I am a volunteer. I got involved because I saw this at a RISE conference and it just tugged at my heart and I just said, oh, I need to get involved. So I did. And I showed the film Sex and Money at our church, and then we just little by little I just got involved with events and public awareness.
Great, okay, so we have three good volunteers here. We have Jody as well.
My name is Jody Allione, and I'm actually in the energy business, so I'm totally off track here on this volunteer work, but it's really consumed my life. When I first heard about human trafficking, it was related to farm trafficking in Hawaii, and I was stunned. And so it kind of grabbed a hold of me. I thought maybe some of us can do something about that. And a few months later, I was brought down to a human justice, social justice conference for women in Australia. And they had every social justice issue there is in the world. And sex trafficking was huge. And I was stunned. I had no idea. I didn't even know it existed anywhere except what you see in the movies. So I became captivated and thought, I think there must be something in Hawaii, and came back and started looking for how can I get involved. And through a series of steps, I ended up meeting the Courage House people, and I said, what are you looking for? And they said, we want to build a house, we want to buy a house and license it. And I said, well, that's what I do, I'm a developer. Oh, okay. And there I was, 2 years later. It's just amazing how much of a mission this has become, and it's been very exciting.
Well, I want to ask you, tell me what happens in Hawaii, because we think of some people that may not be familiar with this topic or might not have the awareness, might think, oh, human trafficking or sex trafficking, that happens somewhere else. That doesn't happen to our children in Hawaii. And maybe some kids get brought in from other states or other countries, but they're not from Hawaii. But of course, that's not true, right? Jessica?
Absolutely. While it is true, pimps do bring in girls from Las Vegas, California, all over the mainland to Hawaii to promote their trafficking business. We do have local kids that are being trafficked. We have kids that are being targeted within our school systems, junior high and high school level kids, where there's recruiting going on within the school campuses. Any child who has a home situation that is not stable, there might be abuse in the home, parents might be involved with drug use, they're prime potential victims because their life is so unstable. And when somebody such as a trafficker comes into their life and offers some sort of stability and a quote-unquote hope for a future, these kids are very easily drawn towards this path.
But I've met parents who are good parents. They have kids with special needs, and their kids were targeted. So, there's no limits to what these traffickers will do. They will target a child with learning disabilities if they can do that and get them roped into it. So you could even be coming from a good home and somehow, a stable home. And although, I know what you mean about the kids that aren't in it. But even parents have to watch out. Even if they think, I'm a good parent, I'm home with my child, I'm watching them. So tell us, I want to know more about how do kids get roped in so parents can really watch for it. And then maybe we could go into the signs of what parents should look for and kids should watch out for as well.
I think a big thing that parents need to realize, and what we tell kids when we've gone into the schools to bring some awareness to the issue, is that these men are professional con artists. And so it's what sounds appealing is, I mean, it's very easy to fall into. They don't come as a big monster. They come as a knight in shining armor. And oftentimes they romance a young girl into getting involved with this. And they don't realize with that first date that they're having what that really is going to mean and what he's requiring of her. And once she realizes it, oftentimes it's too late and she's already trapped within the life of it. As far as what was the question?
Part of it also, I've heard, I've interviewed girls that have had their, just exactly with what you said, but then the person who they've been courting them has known enough about their family, where they live, what they do, where they go to school, to the point where they can say, hey, we know where your family is, we can go and kill them if you don't do what we say.
Right.
And so that is truly, truly frightening, because that's how they've kept the girls to cooperate. I mean, the girls that I've interviewed to, keep them cooperating.
They stalk the girls, and they look around the schoolyards and they see who the fringe girls are. They go to the malls, and now I'm to the point where I tell parents, don't let your girls go to the malls unsupervised. You don't have to hang with them, but keep an eye on who's approaching them and just watch them. Don't let them go on their own. A lot of the girls are taken from the malls.
And Tammy, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, well, for me, it happened really subtly, and
You were a victim.
even though, and at the time, it's 30 years ago, so actually longer than that. So for me, it was just a day at the beach with my friends, but I knew already, because I was in a foster home, that it could happen to me, and I knew that what I was getting into was just going to be so much fun, like I thought that was what I was getting into. And
what do you mean? Like, what do you think you were getting
well,
into?
I met a pimp, and I thought, okay, well, it's going to be a glamorous life for me. And so I was actually trafficked from Hawaii to Alaska, and I made it back. So it was just not thinking that's what I'm going to go do. I was going to the beach.
So how old were you at the time?
I was 15.
And you were living in a foster home.
I was in a foster.
So does what Jessica say about kind of being in that kind of an unstable environment, or having a past that's maybe a little not as stable as some other children, do you think that contributed to what you
Definitely
went through?
contributed, because I was already, I felt dirty already, because I was already, I was molested by my stepdad. So I thought, I'm just dirty anyway. So it really was an identity crisis at that time for me.
And what do you have to say to other girls who might either be already being trafficked, or maybe have a bad feeling about somebody they've met? What do you have to say to them in terms of maybe some warning for them?
It really is an identity thing, is value yourself, and you have a purpose, a specific purpose to be on earth, and it's not to be trafficked, it's not to be prostituted, and it's not to be used by anybody.
So in terms of some of the girls that you work with here, and are they all girls, or are there boys as well?
The focus of our home is specific for adolescent females.
Okay.
At this
So
point.
the girls that you've seen as volunteers, what kind of situation are they in? And why do they need your help?
Well, I can speak from encountering them in the healthcare world. I work in the emergency room, and so I see these girls all the time. Oftentimes they're looking at me for needing medical assistance, whether it's cough, cold, runny nose, or other complaints such as that. But it's constantly the same thing, though. There's a sense of wanting out but not knowing how to get out. If you're talking about children, oftentimes they're in my emergency room with fake IDs, with the pimp, with their uncle or their daddy or whatever they call him. So it's a strategic process of getting in and trying to talk with them and separating them from who they're with. just to try to get more information and try to figure out what exactly I can do from being right in the emergency room with them. But I know with the girls that are over 18 who are out there, you know, a lot of times as society we look at, say, well, can't they just leave? Why don't they, you know, they could just walk right off the street. It's not like they're a little child, you know, but that's that psychological bondage that they're in. It's so powerful and so strong. You don't need walls or chains. It exists. And, you know, you brought up the violence and the threats, and those are very real. I mean, I think that most girls, especially the ones we've talked to, once being off the street, it's constantly looking behind you and wondering when he's going to reappear, and then dealing with the flashbacks and the post-traumatic stress. I mean, the layers of abuse and trauma is creating a mental health illness of PTSD for most of these girls.
I've heard that before and interviewed girls that have been counseled on that. But it seems like, you know, in Hawaii, we really don't have all the things we need to help a victim that's been a victim. For example, I interviewed a girl, and she had been a victim. She had been molested. She had been in a poor home. She was one of 6 children. The dad had mental illness. The mother was working all the time. The brother was always getting into trouble. So she just, you know, ended up in this whole life working at 350 Ward Avenue, as a matter of fact, which is a place right in the middle of town. You wouldn't think that right in the middle of Honolulu, in a building right across from Sports Authority, is where these children are being trafficked. And I've sat out there, and the men come in, and it's a rotating thing. And, you know, so she when she got out, she kept getting sucked back into this life because she was on drugs. She had been put on drugs by the pimp. She had been given money that she never had before for the family to eat. And they were, you know, they didn't have food stamps because they weren't from this country. And there was just a lot of problems, and she just kept getting sucked back in and sucked back in. And there was really no way in school. They didn't have the counseling system set up for her. They didn't have the psychology treatment that she needed. So I think what you're doing with Courage House is really important, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about what it is. First of all, Tammy, do you mind saying something about what I'm saying?
I'm totally going to share about that. So for me, when I came back, I had a social worker, and I had services through the social service, the Department of Human Services here. So I had a psychologist that would come to my house and talk to me and fall asleep. And I would, you know, I had a foster mom that was great, but I still had this thing in me that was like, well, if things get tough, I have this little trump card that I can play on. And so that would happen quite often in my adult life. And so I found myself working in Korean bars, or just finding a date here or there, working in a strip bar, and just not fully getting out, just like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And I really struggled for many years, whereas if I had gotten some help right when I got back from Alaska, my identity would have been secured in who I really was, and that trauma and all the things that happened to me during that time, and even before that with my home life, would have been healed, you know, in a facility like Courage House, because there is therapy and there is constant accountability as to like what kind of work you're doing on yourself. And it took me 30 years and then a good, like, to get out, and then a good 10 years of healing. So, you know, what took 10 years of healing can take a girl 2 years in a Courage House.
Right.
So I know that can happen. We have girls that are healed that come out of Courage House.
So tell me about this place you want to build, and why is it so important that there is a Courage House in Hawaii?
As Tammy said, the services are very fragmented. And not a lot of people within the DHS system, within the juvenile justice system, even understand that we have a trafficking problem. So if you're not recognizing that there's even a problem, you won't necessarily recognize the signs. So oftentimes these girls are placed into juvenile detention facilities, foster home placements, Hawaii's corrections facility, and no one really knew that the core of their problem was that they were being trafficked. So the sexual trauma and the sexual abuse piece and the multiple rapes and manipulation, all of that gets buried. And so our goal with Courage House is that each girl who comes into Courage House, we work with her to develop a unique life plan specific to her needs, her wants, her dreams. What did she want as a child that got, that she kind of had to put on hold because of this whole other piece of her life? And so everything we do deals with cognitive-based trauma therapy. So we look at healing and approaches to healing of body, mind, spirit, and emotion. So every single thing we do, from equine therapy to art therapy to dance therapy to music therapy, it's all about healing and healing of the trauma. And a lot of times when the girls first come into the home, it takes the first 3 months of just figuring out, okay, this is the dishwasher, this is how we put, cups away, this is how we cook, just very basic things. We get up at this time. We do on-site schooling because most of the girls are not able to go back into the school systems, and it's not safe for them. So everything we do looks at holistic approaches to health and to recovery. So our dream would be, in every place that we're looking at for this home, is that it's somewhere in a remote location, rural location, with at least 5 acres of land, so that we can grow things, so that we can teach them how to work with horses and how to, having other animals on the property, on-site schooling. It's almost, and I hate to say this way, but it's a one-stop shopping where everything is provided right on site. But what's amazing is, even though we have fragmented services in Hawaii, we have one of the leaders that deals with sex trauma. There's a psychologist on island who is world-renowned. He speaks all over the world. And so he's come on board with us, and he's helping direct a lot of the psychological aspect of care.
Great. Well, we'll have to have him on the show, too. So, putting it out there in the universe, you're looking for this home, and if anybody has a home that they'd want to donate or funding to help you get funding, donating money, but also you have a big event coming up.
Yes, we do.
So who wants to tell me about that?
I'll tell you about our little event before our big event.
Sure.
So we have a training coming up. It's on August 19th. It's at Hope Chapel Olamana in Kailua. And it really will tell you what we are all about as Courage Worldwide Hawaii, and it'll give you many opportunities to volunteer, and it will just tell you everything that you need to know. So come over and
what was
get
that again?
trained. It's on August 19th.
August 19th, okay.
So we have, constantly we're being bombarded with people wanting to get involved, and there are several ways to get involved. Whether it's fundraising, whether it's something about licensing, something about land development, it's getting the word out there. You would think it would be, people hear about child trafficking and it breaks their heart. But then you almost get paralyzed and you don't know what to do because the problem is so huge and overwhelming. But one thing we can do is do something tangible, which is get this home open, because I've talked to every single person on this island who touches these kids in some way, and they will all tell you the same thing. There is no home. The FBI just did this huge sweep, and there was 105 children rescued. Do you know that there's only 150 beds nationwide to accommodate kids?
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
That have been trafficked. It barely skims the surface.
Right.
So it's really important that we get this home open. I know that people are just waiting. The people who touch these kids and are working with them now know that this is needed, because you need some place that's safe and protected, and all the services can be provided in one location.
And what about, do you have anything to add since you're working on the home plan?
Well, ideally, this site would be about 5 acres in a rural location on the North Shore or on the windward side. We are looking at two locations. One has buildings already, and the other one is a raw piece of land that we could build. In any event, we're going to need $2 to $3 million to build, to buy and to build. And it's really tough because everybody wants to donate after. So if anyone knows of a site, knows of something that we could look at where maybe we could work at a lease, a long-term lease would be lovely because we could move in immediately. At this point, everything we've seen requires a purchase. So maybe just by us talking now, we can find some way to get another lead on a piece of land that might be available. But specifically, we have zeroed down to those geographic areas.
And it's a very strenuous licensing process. I think one thing it's important for the people who are watching this show to understand is this isn't just a shelter where girls show up and come into Courage House, but it's a licensed facility, so it's licensed to provide treatment. So it's really important, I think, for people to understand the depth of what it is. We could all buy a house and open it and just take people in, which is fabulous and is so needed, but we're talking about children and children under 18, and so we want to provide them with the brightest future possible. And so part of that comes with the cost of getting a successful facility open.
So fundraising is a big part of our life on every level. We have a program called 1,000 from 1,000, and we thought, well, if 1,000 people donated $1,000 every year, we'd have our operations covered. And so we're on that campaign with various organizations, entities, churches, individuals, and a lot of people are stepping up to that, but that's a long haul. We have a huge fundraiser on September 8th. It's up at Sunset Ranch. It's a Sunday evening from 4 to 8. Beautiful location. Great day to come up there and see it, and it's going to be beautifully done, and we'll have the auctions, etc. So we sell those tickets on our website, and there's a lot of small fundraisers that various entities are coming up with all the time, and people say, oh, we just did a fundraiser, here's your money. So there's a lot of ways for people to participate. They don't have to get involved in a big gala. They can do small things.
Okay, but I'm putting it out there. If you have $3 million and you want to donate, or you have a house on the beach with 5 acres and you want to make a big difference for a lot of children, this is a great opportunity for you to make a difference in the world. So let's just put it out there. You never know. It's a lot easier to get $3 million from one person than $1,000 from 1,000 people.
Or 3,000 people.
3,000 people. 3,000 people. Sorry. Reporters aren't like 100% good at math. That's why we become reporters. Yeah.
A ranch setting would be ideal.
Ranch setting. Okay, there you go.
The beach setting's real tough.
Yeah. Okay.
But a ranch setting.
Well, all right. So I wanted to take the last 5 minutes of the show to kind of have, maybe you can tell us some stories about, you've shared your personal story, maybe some people that you've met, some kids you've met, and what they've been through, and why is it important for them to have this opportunity with the Courage House? Or is there anyone in your mind that stands out that you've met that said, wow, that's a really amazing story? And I know for myself, I've met some children who how I mentioned, but one of the girls I met was at a party, and she got raped at the party at her own relative's home, taken away from there, and the trafficker took her right from there. She didn't know them, and ended up in this whole life right in the middle of Waikiki. And she'd see her family go by, but she couldn't say anything because she felt like they would be killed. She was threatened over and over again. Her whole dream was to become a ballet dancer, and she had to give up that dream, and now is in this kind of you were saying about the shock afterward and the flashbacks and so on. So she's in all kinds of treatment, but one of the things that she wants to do is really try to get back into dancing. And so I hope that stories like that, the littlest things will make such a big difference for these kids that have been through these terrible things with these really, really, really evil people. Is there anyone that you can think of that you can share any of the stories, or Tammy, do you want to share anything else?
Well, we have one gal that we're reaching out to, and she's pretty stuck in it still, but she's an adult. So even her, if her issues had been addressed when she was 17, then she may not still be stuck in it at 30. So I don't know personally any girls right now. I used to go into the youth facility, and I met 2 girls while I did ministry in there. And, they were in there for charges. They weren't in there for prostitution. So, that, again, like Jessica said, it's an underlying thing. They're not addressed as victims. They're addressed as criminals. So I know that girl, she didn't get help at that time. So I'm not sure where
that's
she's
true.
at
That's
today.
a lot of problem where people see these kids as prostitutes and they don't see them as victims. And so I think we have a big mindset to change with the police department, with the healthcare workers, and I know that's happening here slowly, a little bit surely, with the education that you're talking about, and these workshops that you do and other people do, the outreach that goes on. But that's really important for people to know that they are victims.
I would like to bring up, we have started an initiative called the Smart Courage Program. And this year we went into 14 different presentations to 1,400 kids in various high schools. And we had someone come forward in almost every single class that recognized it had happened to them, or somebody had approached them, or someone had approached a girlfriend, or oh my goodness, that's where she went. So the kids are recognizing the problem. So we have a new program coming up. It's called Smart Courage. We're using a movie. It's very well orchestrated and put together, and we want to send it out to every single one of the secondary schools in the state. It's 120 schools. So we can't just send it. We have to send a team out that we've developed to go in and teach the teachers how to teach it and how to do the follow-up. So that's a big program to try and stop the flow from our schools into the into this trap.
So you don't just need money and a home, you also need volunteers.
Yes.
So what do you need volunteers for so people can learn about that and how to get involved?
Fundraising is the biggest one. I hate to say it, but that's like we need people with creative ideas and that will support it. They don't have to lead it, but to come in and help. I mean, we have a huge outcry for people to do a whole lot of different things. At our orientation, which you're required to go to, we'll outline everything. We need grant writers. We need potential people that would work in the home once we get moving. We need people that will go into the school systems, that are teachers, that understand this population, that particular 7 to 12 population. And so there's a lot of areas to volunteer. There's no shortage.
Reaching out to corporations who want to, just become partners.
Well, let's show your website real quick so people know how to get a hold of you. It's Courage Worldwide, and here's your website here, and the website address is what?
www.courageworldwide.org/Hawaii.
Okay, so that's easy to remember, CourageWorldwide/Hawaii.
There's an incredible blog that came on the parent website of our California site, which was put out yesterday in response to this recent bust of all the pimps. And on that, the secondary blog is a story, a life in the day of a young girl that has gone through Courage House when she was 6 years old and what happened to her. And she's going to continue her story, but I really suggest people go to the site and read it. It will move your heart.
We have a very serious problem in Hawaii, and I've talked about this on the radio and in Hawaii Reporter and other places, with children getting molested, and then they end up, then they become a target for this. And we've had children as young as 1 year old in Hawaii be molested. It's very sad. So I'm really thankful that you're doing all this work. I hope you get a lot of volunteers. I hope you get your $3 million tomorrow. And we'll have you back on the show when you do, or any other time you want.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been News Behind the News. Aloha.